Hello, my name is Kelsey Miller, and this is my contribution for live class number 1. Um, Dr. Calafoot and colleagues, I'm looking forward to working with you all this semester. Just to get started, Dr. Calafoot made the comment about us all being in the same boat, all learning about math, and I highly respect and appreciate that comment. Just to dig right in on why the course is important, I can understand about the points about applied and experimental findings and just being able to read the basic literature. Even in the articles for this week, I found myself making short annotations on the side of the articles. So just being able to read the basic literature, analyze, annotate, and apply it in clinical settings. Although Dr. Calafoot, you made the comment about the course not necessarily bridging the gap between EAB and ABA, but I do think it's essential to be able to apply those foundational principles eventually. The part about the condition reinforces function and how the Cooper book is wrong. I'm actually just coming out of radical behaviorism with Dr. Bass, and he made the same point about the Cooper book and even about the motivational operations with Jack Michaels and how that whole concept is just bogus. So I just think ultimately the field was shaping us for the exam, teaching to the test, and nothing beyond that. But I'm happy to be able to finally dig in and learn the truth behind everything. So Dr. Calafoot made the point about the terms may sound more semantic like or more like semantics, but really semantics are the very root or foundation of meanings. So lessons from the lab: how do we study cognition in an operant chamber? Clearly because the operant chamber is related to Skinner, I thought about B.F. Skinner and how he was just such a proponent, radical behaviorist who emphasized the study of observable behavior in that operant chamber, and how he just really pointed out the ways to overcome mentalistic terms that reference those unobservable inner states of our very beings. So when it comes to studying what might traditionally be labeled as cognition, Skinner would suggest focusing on the observable behaviors and the conditions under which those behaviors occur. So in that way, we could look at operant conditioning, which seems really basic, but it helps us to analyze organisms that can learn to make specific reinforcers based on the consequences, and just some other basic principles like discrimination and generalization, chaining, delayed reinforcement, or just generally reinforcement and punishment. And then just seeking the patterns of behaviors and the concept formation, the way that reinforcing responses to certain patterns of stimuli occur. So that's that. I think that for Skinner, what might be labeled as cognition or thinking in other approaches is just simply another form of behavior that can be analyzed and understood within the framework of operant conditioning. Which leads me to the heroin paper. I actually found that paper very interesting. To begin with, Dr. Calafoot's contingency versus contiguity. Contingency is just basically, like my colleague said, it's a rule about a temporal relationship or relation between the environment and the behavior. We often see this in the 3-model contingency of ABC, antecedent behavior, consequences. And then contiguity is also like proximity, like temporal. So I guess this would be, it would refer, because it's about proximity, it would refer to the closeness in time between two stimuli, or maybe that again, that contingency factor of measuring the relationship between behavior and the environment. But then again, that makes them sound a lot alike. So the next article, I'm sorry, I thought I made notes about, okay, maybe didn't put my notes on here about the heroin article. Sorry. I do have my notes about the Pavlovian conditioning by Mr. Robert Roskerlo. Sorry. But basically, even in that article, there was a point about contingency theory. So I think it was one of the most influential points that was made about how the importance of contingency between the CS, the conditioned stimulus, and the unconditioned stimulus, which is the U.S., he argued that the simple temporal pairing of the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus, as Pavlov had originally mentioned, wasn't sufficient for conditioning to occur. So he just delved a bit deeper. So instead of the organism having to detect a reliable contingency, meaning like the CS must be reliably predicted in the unconditioned stimulus. This model also had a lot of other things that were pretty interesting, but what struck me the most was the bridge between the heroin article and the Pavlovian conditioning article. It just made me think because, they say, how can ABA change the world? And the simple answer is yes, but there's a much deeper meaning and understanding behind all of that. And even with the heroin article, it kind of just made me think of, okay, how can ABA help in substance abuse or substance use? And to just genuinely sit there and think about it, I'm simply reminded of the conditioned drug effects. So substance use often occurs in a consistent environment or context, and over time, the cues associated with drug use, like seeing a specific location or certain friends or things that just kind of remind you of the drug use, can then themselves elicit conditioned responses. So this could also include things like cravings or psychological reactions, mood changes, or even that time, the antecedents of time before the drug was consumed. My aunt is a mental health nurse, so I can relate to this a bit more. Also on the level of tolerance. So a conditioned drug can lead to tolerance, meaning that an individual increasing their amounts of substances over time to achieve the desired effect. There's research that believes that tolerance is a partly conditioned response, but who's to say? From a behavioral perspective, I guess that would be a good question. Oh, anyway, so if a person uses a drug in the same context repeatedly, then their body might be able to begin anticipating the drug's effects and produce like collateral effects like increased heart rate or metabolism or something like that that counteracts with that drug. So this means that they'll need more of the drug to get the same effect. So again, that condition and unconditioned stimuli going together. I just think that ultimately understanding the principles of classical conditioning, especially with the nuances introduced by researchers like the one who made the heroin and Pavlovian conditioning article, provides us with valuable insights onto the underlying mechanisms of substance abuse and addiction so that we can create effective treatment strategies. Thank you.